Okay, so first example here for extra practice says 5n squared plus 80n plus 320 equals 0. What was always the direction to do first?
Factor.
Factor, good. And you kind of want to factor by GCF first. That always helps. What would my GCF be for this problem?
5.
5. You are left with n squared plus 16n plus 64 equals 0. All right, I have 3 terms. What do I do when I have 3 terms? How do I factor those 3?
Use Super X.
Super X, good. On top is your A, which is 1, times your C, which is 64. So it's 64. On the bottom is your B, which is 16. This is N and N. Two numbers that multiply to 64 and add to 16.
8.
What are, there you go, I heard it. 8 and 8. So my factor is 5, n plus 8, n plus 8. There is no difference in these two terms, which means I only need to do one of them because there is no difference. I'm going to do this one right here. X plus 8 equals 0. I'm going to subtract the 8 to give me an answer that x equals a negative 8. However, since this one is the same, what do I write after this one here? What would I write to tell me that I had the same answer twice? It was in the notes.
Multiplicity of 2.
Thank you. Multiplicity of 2. It's telling me that I have 2 of the same answers, or 2 of the same roots, or 2 of the same zeros. All those 3 terms are the same thing. And here's something to note. Since I have 2 of these, I have 2 roots. My highest degree was a 2, which means they match, so I'm done. I am correct here. Any questions on this one? I'll move on in 10 seconds unless somebody needs more time. Right. Okay, good question I have in the comment. It said, to include 5 equals 0. So let's get in the habit of doing this and saying, not that, of doing this and saying 5 equals 0, which isn't true, so cross it out. So the only answer I'm looking for would be this. The reason why I want you to get in this habit here is because if we get an answer like this that says x squared, x plus 8, x plus 8, then this would give you x equals negative 8, but this will also give you an answer. And x equals 0. So your answers for this problem will be negative 8 and 0. You need to understand that 0 is a number just like negative 8 is. So your answer would be both of those. Good question. All right. Example 2. 0 equals 12m squared minus 75. What is my GCF?
Three.
It is 3. That leaves me with 4m squared minus 25. What do we notice about this here?
The difference of squares.
Perfect. It is a difference, because the negative, of squares. M squared is a perfect square. 4 is a perfect square, and so is 25. So we should know by now that the rule is this will become 2m minus 5 and 2m plus 5. And that's still equal to 0. If we solve, 3 doesn't equal 0, that's done there. 2m minus 5 equals 0. I don't know why I wrote it slanted. You would add the 5 and divide by 2. So 5 over 2 is one answer. Then you do this one because they are different. Subtract the 5 this time and divide by 2 to give you negative 5 over 2. I had 1 and 2 solutions, 2 roots or 2 zeros, and here I had a degree of 2, meaning they match, so I'm done. Any questions with this example?
If we do it right, the degree and the number of zeros should always match, right?
Correct. They should-
So like you should have 2 answers if your degree is 2.
Perfect.
Okay.
At the end of the video, if you guys didn't get to the very end, my very last example even showed you one that said, without doing any of the work, how many roots are there? How many zeros are there? And you kind of have to look at, like, I think it was in this form here. So you would look to see, like, okay, this is just a 1 here, so that's only 1. And if this was a 1 and maybe a 3, then that would be 3 of them. So I would have 4 answers. And you just have to look at stuff like that. All right. Last example. 28k cubed minus 21k squared minus 224k plus 168 equals 0. There are 4 terms here. How do we solve these if there's 4 terms?
Grouping.
Grouping, good. You would take these first 2 terms, and then you group these next 2 terms. Here's something that I need to kind of say very quickly is, I've showed you that when it's 3 terms, you do the super X. When it's 4 terms, you do grouping. I have never showed you, and another teacher has never showed you, that when you have 3 terms, you can do grouping. That method is only shown when you use PhotoMath. So if I see that on any work that you have a 3-term one, but you do grouping, I'm going to assume it was done through PhotoMath, so I can't give you credit for that question. So if that was you during a test and you did that and I see the work, I can't give you points for it, which means you need to start asking for help to kind of make sure we understand it correctly. All right, this one here in red. My GCF of 28k cubed minus 21k squared. What is it?
Seven.
7 what? Keep going.
K squared.
Perfect. That leaves me with 4k minus 3. Now the next of the numbers are bigger, so I'll help you out. It's going to be negative 56. 4k minus 3. Here's a question that some people may just be wondering. Like, why is this a negative if only one of them is negative and not both? So I always say, if you're doing the GCF, whichever term has the highest degree, that's the sign you take. So for example, since this one was positive and this one was negative, this third is the k third to the third power is a bigger power, which means I make it positive. Between these two here, this was negative, this one's positive. This one has a k, this one doesn't. Therefore, I take the negative sign. So I have these things here. I can combine them now. 4k minus 3 and 7k squared minus 56. And I solve. This becomes 4k minus 3 equals 0. Add the 3. Divide by 4. There is one answer. Take the next one. You can solve right away. You can take GCF first and see that there is a GCF of 7. K squared minus 8 is not a difference of squares because 8 is not a perfect square. So if you divide it by 7, you get k squared minus 8 equals 0. K squared equals 8. Take the square root. K equals plus or minus radical 8. Does anybody know how to simplify this a little bit more? Any guesses what the answer would be?
2 root 2.
Perfect. And here's how it's done. You have 8 and you do a factor tree. You have 2 and 4. 4 is 2 and 2. The pairs come on the outside. The singles go back on the inside. So I have two answers here. K equals a positive 2 root 2 and K equals a negative 2 root 2. So I have one answer, two answers, three answers, and I started with root or a power of 3. Any questions for this problem?